Okay, so Eden Hazard has finally retired. We all knew it was coming at some point soon. His contract with Madrid was terminated earlier this summer, and I don't think anybody relevant really wanted to sign him. That means we've come to the conclusion of one of the most disappointing sports stories ever. One of the biggest regrets I have about not becoming a football fan earlier is the fact that I missed Hazard's entire prime. And sure, I went back and watched his seasons with Chelsea, but it's never the same as witnessing it live. That man was nasty. There's all kinds of players across sports whose careers have been derailed by injuries. There's D Rose, arguably the greatest what-if in NBA history, shredded that ACL right after he won an MVP as he entered his prime. Still was a useful player after, but obviously never anywhere near as good. Bo Jackson is one of the greatest athletes ever if we're talking about pure athleticism. Both his football and baseball career were cut short by injuries, though. Grant Hill was just entering his prime when that ankle injury fucked him up and even made him miss an entire season at one point. In football, you have Ronaldo, who's still an all-time great despite having numerous severe injuries. There's Marco van Basten, whose career was cut short in his prime when he'd already won 3 Ballon d'Ors. There's Adriano, Paul Pogba, Michael Owen, plenty of big names. Hazard's situation is pretty unique, though. He had been strangely sturdy for his entire career before Madrid. I say strangely, not because it's weird to be a durable player, but with how much Hazard got fouled, you would think he'd have an injury record more like Neymar's throughout his career. That hadn't been the case, though. Before 2019, when he left Chelsea, Hazard had never played less than 30 games in a season. That doesn't sound impressive until you see what defenders were doing to him. He was one of the most unguardable players ever. Obviously, as a defender, when you're that scared of somebody getting past you, you're gonna foul them. Me personally, if somebody grilling me like this in front of my wife and kids, best believe I'm coming for them shins. The eye test isn't even the craziest part about this, though. The stats are even more ridiculous. Hazard arrived in the Prem in the beginning of the 2012-13 season. In that season, he was fouled 79 times, 5th most in the league, and 33 more than his closest teammate, Ramirez, who was at 46. Okay, that's calm. Nothing crazy, right? The next season, he was fouled 89 times, the most in the league. It's getting kind of nasty out there, but surely it can't get that much worse, right? The next season, when Chelsea won the league, he was fouled 113 times. That's 41 more times than Alexis Sanchez in second place. What the actual fuck? I know his ankles were actually screaming out loud. That motherfucker was limping towards the ice baths after every game like a cripple. In the 2016 and 2018 seasons, he was fouled over 100 times again, yet he played at least 34 games in every one of his Premier League seasons besides that disastrous 2015 season. That year, he only played 31. Now, obviously, he wasn't getting fouled as much as Neymar. Neymar's on a whole nother planet when it comes to that shit. Hazard's highest number of fouls in a season is 113. Neymar's highest number is 130 back when he played for Barcelona in 2015. That wasn't even the worst season, though. He was fouled over 100 times in his first season for PSG. That doesn't sound crazy till you remember that he literally missed half the season and only played 20 games. He was getting fouled over 5 times a game, bro. The difference between them, though, is that the absolute assault on Neymar started taking a toll on his body way sooner. He hasn't played more than 22 games in a season since 2016. Like I said earlier, Hazard was sturdy as shit for a while before his body broke down at Madrid. So what was it about the move that suddenly impacted his durability? Well, it was a combination of things. Hazard was notorious for being lazy as shit. Everybody's heard that famous statement Mikel John Obi made about him being a slacker who didn't eat well but still performed. Jose Mourinho also commented on it, saying that when he first arrived, everybody pretty much agreed that Hazard was one of the worst trainers. He later added that Hazard has become a good professional, quote-unquote, in training, which, I'm going to be honest, I don't even know what that means. It sounds like he's saying he just shows up and goes through the motions. I'm not going to lie. Eating like shit without training seriously is cool and all when you're young and your body's at its peak. But when age starts to creep up and you're approaching your 30s, it isn't exactly the smartest thing for one of the best soccer players in the world. All of a sudden, you're not bouncing right back up anymore when them cleats slam into your ankles 3 or 4 times a game. You get slower, and it's harder to avoid aggressive defenders who are terrified of you embarrassing them in front of an entire country. Ronaldo has talked countless times about how his insane training keeps his body intact despite 2 decades at the highest levels of the sport. There's a reason he was still an elite player all the way into his mid to late 30s. I feel like Hazard thought he was invincible coming into Real Madrid. He had been eating like a fat ass his whole life and he was still frying motherfuckers. Can't be much harder in Spain, right? There was reports that he showed up in preseason overweight and even he himself admitted it. His answer was funny as hell though. They asking him why he's so fat and he talking about some when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. Bro, get your hefty ass in the gym. What are you talking about? How you gonna sign for the biggest club in the history of the sport and immediately turn around and start busting down fucking steak and lobster for a month straight? He showed up looking like Zion off a week of that New Orleans gumbo. The combination of his lack of care towards his body and the absurd aggression that defenders had towards him ended up doing him in. And it's crazy because Mourinho predicted it. Back in 2015, Mourinho said that we might not have Eden Hazard anymore in the future because of how badly opponents abuse him with little protection from the refs. He was right, and that might have been the worst $115 million Real Madrid ever spent. It's not as bad as some other players who got shredded by injury, though. We got 7 years of him at Chelsea absolutely violating defenders. There's a lot of players who didn't even get to sniff their prime. If I had to compare him to a player, I think it would be T-Mac. T-Mac was one of the best players in the league for maybe about 4 or 5 seasons before his back injury started to become too much and his production started to fall off when he was only 29 years old. Hazard was one of the best in the world for quite a few seasons. Just like T-Mac, though, in his late 20s, it all fell apart and he was never the same because of his mounting injuries. Both of them were borderline the best for a very short period of time. T-Mac that season, he averaged 32 and Hazard back in 2018 and 19. They were never the definitive best, though. T-Mac was always behind Duncan, Shaq, and AI, while, of course, the entire 2010s decade of football was completely ran by Ronaldo and Messi, so Hazard never really stood a chance in best player in the world talks. Hazard is the main reason I'm worried about Saka, I'm not gonna lie. He's been in the top 10 most foul players each of the last 3 seasons, and he played 80-something games in a row in the league. He might look sturdy now, but he gonna really start feeling it eventually. He finna need a cane by the time he's 27 at this rate. Please rest that man more often, Arteta. I'm begging you. Hazard is still a Premier League legend. There's no doubt about that. We definitely would have been looking at him a lot differently if he performed even half of the way he did at Chelsea, though.